Hello and welcome to the Wealthy Wellbeing Podcast, where we talk all things health, fitness, real estate, and entrepreneurship. My name is Zach Bush, and I am your host. Today, I have a special guest, friend of mine, Dan Grove. Dan, thanks for coming on the show today.
Of course. Coming just down I-95, a little stretch down I-95 from where you are.
That's right. Yeah, you're not too far from me. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So, we met, I don't know how long ago it was now, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So obviously I know a lot about you. So why don't you give the audience a little bit of your background and what's gotten you to where you are today? And then we'll talk about, where you're going from here.
Yeah, for sure. So my day job, I have a pretty decent day job. My W-2, as they say. I'm an intensive care doctor. I work in the ICU, and I also do pulmonary diseases. Well-being and wealthy well-being is also, I started with the well-being, working on the wealthy part now. We'll see how it goes. And then, I got sort of like most doctors in America, sort of taken over by one of the big corporate health systems that is sort of gobbling up all physician practices. So I was part of a large practice that got taken over. And I started getting concerned about, the corporatization of medicine and what happens when they start, doing stuff and making me do things that I'm not interested in, making me see more patients or spend less time with them, or eventually if all the corporate training becomes too onerous, I wanted to be, and then what if there's a chopping block? You never know, right? So I wanted to have something I could build that, would give me some flexibility and maintain some sense of control and freedom. So I started investing in real estate. I got educated, self-educated. I did the classic bigger pockets, buy all the books. I was never a YouTube video guy. I find the YouTube videos typically distasteful. It's like, I don't know. I feel like a used car salesman selling me something every time I watch one of those things. And I've never been one for the get rich quick things. I guess I'm too old and wise for that. And so I got into, buying houses that way. I used a home equity loan. I had some money saved, and then I heard one day, I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I heard Pace Morby from the Sub 2 community on a podcast. And I was like, yeah, that's sort of the answer. You can, all the wonderful things you can do with creative finance. And I joined that mentorship, and I used the rest of my funds to acquire more properties. And then I joined a coaching program with somebody named Jesse Stanton, who is, and who's now coaching and us, me to help sort of scale that up. How do we sort of build from that? And so that's what we've been working on the last several months. And so that's my goal. My goal is to build this up. I also have 5 kids, so I want to have something that they can get it if they want to. They don't have to. They want to get into it when they get older. And so it's all about kind of, maintaining control and the ability to sort of direct my future. That's also that's my target now. I'm trying to connect with people who maybe were similar to me. There's a lot of people out there who they save up their money for the future, and they give it to some giant corporate entity, like one of those big investment banks or the big banks, and they put their money in mutual funds or in index funds, and they just sort of give it away and hope that these market currents, the politics, the macroeconomics, everything kind of works out for them. And while that's happening, the banks and the investment firms are like sucking out fees and all kinds of stuff without them realizing it. And they have no control or say. So I've been connecting with investors, like people who have that kind of money. They say, listen, I'd like to have a little bit more control. I'd like to get a little bit better return. And so they're investing with us and in buying single family houses that they can have some more control and say, and also just diversify. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Lots to dig into there. Let's start with what you started with in the, physician doctor side of things. So what got you started in that? Like, I'm always interested. I have a couple of friends who are like, one's a heart surgeon. And so it's always interesting to hear why they got into it. So what got you into that field?
So I actually got into buying real estate when I was in my training in 2010. And it was because I had a friend who was sort of a wealthy investor. And he's like, you got to do this, because that was in Atlanta. And this was after the crash, and you could buy a house in Atlanta for $35,000. And you can't do that anymore, right?
No.
So he helped me. So what he did was he put up the money up front, and then we got it refinanced out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had those, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I became sort of overwhelmed by dealing with tenants and all this. So I had no clue what I was doing, and it just overwhelmed me. And so I sort of sold them. And we don't want to know how much money I lost by not keeping those houses. We're not going to talk about that. But I knew, and ever since then, I'm like, oh wait, and I realized like all the things I did wrong and stuff like that. And so I kind of always wanted to get back into it, because of sort of the he kind of showed me the value of it. I just wasn't prepared. And so that's why this time I got back into it. I knew that it's really the best avenue. I mean, there's really like 3 ways to get wealthy. One is real estate. The other is business, having an equity stake in business. And the other one is if you have some sort of intellectual property,
Mm-hmm.
code, or I don't know, patents or whatever. So I don't have any patents. And I don't know enough about businesses, right? Because each business is its own education.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, real estate, I could understand. And so seems like this is the best avenue for people like you and me, or whatever, people who are maybe professionals who already have a level of expertise in a full-time job,
Mm-hmm.
and want to sort of get involved in something which has the ability to build equity, build wealth over time in a beneficial way that doesn't require, an advanced degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how did you meet him? And was he like kind of your first mentor?
Yeah. So he was one of my wife's best friend's husband. Right.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, and we were friends, like we're friends. I like, listen, I was in my medical training, so I didn't have, and I had at that time, 3 small children. I didn't have much of a headspace for anything else, but he kind of told me about it. So, and then over the years, kind of, and then more recently, asking him advice. Yeah, he was like, I guess they have, everybody read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He was the rich dad, in that respect. And so that's what kind of got me thinking about these things, and the idea of passive income, asset building, all that stuff, which was not something I was raised with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was, I was in a family where you get an education, you get a professional job. I come from a line of engineers, right? Like, and so not a lot of business minded people in my family. So yeah, he was definitely the one that kind of, and once I that mistake, even though it was costly in some respects, when I started doing this time, I did it totally different. I was like, I'm going to fully educate myself and understand what I'm getting into and how to manage these things, so that, because it turns out, right, that every house has problems.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be prepared for all those problems, and they can come in all kinds of different ways. And so that was good to learn how to handle those things.
Yeah. So you came in the second time around. You said you approached it a little bit differently. I think you also had the advantage of having the experience of what went wrong, what you didn't like, to be able to take that. So you're not starting from ground zero, right? Whenever you start something new, I had a conversation on another podcast like 1 or 2 ago, and it's like, hey, you're not starting from scratch when you start something new or restart something, right? You had this experience. So you took a different approach. And what specifically did you take from the first time? Like, what lessons did you take and change going into it now the second time?
So one was, to be prepared. You have to be prepared for like tenant management, property management. And to me, that meant either mostly not being prepared to manage the property, but being prepared to have somebody manage the property, that knows what they're doing. Right. I mean, I think that one of the things that I've learned is that, all these mistakes I made, I didn't have to learn how to prevent those mistakes. I didn't have to learn much about any of it. All I needed to learn was how to find somebody who knew how to deal with those things. Like, how do you deal with like things like evictions? I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to learn about any of that stuff. Right. But like when I was talking to a property management company, I read about how do you, interview, what question do you ask property manager? And like when, this house we're in Detroit, and when the property management company, says like, this is I'm not with this company anymore, but like, and I won't name who they are, but they said, listen, we don't, we have the eviction process, but we also have an unofficial arrangement with a biker gang and some ex-cops that without breaking the law can make it very uncomfortable for the tenants who are not paying to stay. Right. To which I said, first of all, I said, you're hired. And then I said, Detroit, I don't know anything about this. I don't want to know. Like,
I don't want to know. Yeah.
As long as you promise me no laws will be broken, that's fine. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so like the idea of finding experts that can give you the answers instead of, trying to find, figure it out yourself. Like for me and having, in my whole life, I am the expert, meaning, I'm the one that people ask the questions, right? In fact, I'm an ICU doctor, which means the doctors send their patients to me because they're too sick for those doctors, right? They're too complicated for those doctors. Like my job is to be the expert that doctors rely on for their patients. So it's, so I was like, okay, so instead of trying to be the expert, I think the value is learning that, it's better to find the expert than be the expert, because it's usually, it's too much effort and it's inefficient.
Yeah. So so it's hard when you're doing something so consistently, a day in and day out, to not get stuck in that way of life or that mindset. And it sounds like you've made that transition from being the expert to now, all right, how can I find the experts? What would you suggest for somebody who's kind of stuck in that same way of like, hey, I'm the expert, I need to know everything, and trying to make that transition to being somebody who's okay with kind of letting stuff go and finding the experts? Like, what's the best way to find those experts and kind of let that control go that you might have?
Well, I mean, I learned it the hard way, right? Listen, there are an endless amount of expertises that come in all kinds of different forms, right? There's artistic expertise, and there's, manufacturing expertise and construction expertise, all these things where people spend years. And I think that's the perspective. Like I knew how long I had spent to get the level of expertise I had and how much effort it was. And like somebody has done the same thing for whatever they're good at. And so for me, it was like, it's just a relief to not have to, I mean, I have an Airbnb that I was managing myself. I didn't want to, but I did because the IRS has a loophole in the tax law where you can offset depreciation against your W-2 if you're the primary manager of an Airbnb. So I did that. And so I had to do that. But I've been managing this Airbnb, which is not hard, but like it's not like exciting work or anything like that. And and I'm working on finding, pretty close to, finalizing with a manager that's local to the area. And just like, remember, I learned all the expertise. I learned the software. I spent all this time on YouTube. I figured all this stuff out, and I was doing a fine job, but he's going to do so much better.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what, like, he's going to just be better. Right. I talked to the guy, like he's got this, 20 properties, and he lives in the city or in the area. And so like, and then I was just like, it's just, I think the minute that people can just let go of that, like I got to be in control of everything, it's just such a relief. You know what I mean? It just, you learn how to vet people and how to get out of things if it's not working. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's hard initially, right? It's just like you said, learning how to deal with that and learn that, just kind of like getting into that uncomfortable feeling of letting somebody else take control of it. But you also mentioned that, he's going to do a better job than you. So he's probably going to do it quicker, right? It's going to come at a cost, but he might potentially be able to offset that cost because he's more efficient. He gets higher rates or whatever that might be. So I think it's part of that. And I know I've learned that through trying to let go of some control is like you're putting them in their zone of genius. So they're going to have more fun doing it. They're going to do a better job. They're going to be more efficient. They're going to probably make more money than you would. And now you don't have to do it. And I don't remember what the saying is. I think it was in Dan Martell's book, but it's like, hey, if somebody can do 80% of a job, 80% of as good of a job as you can, that's 100% perfect, because now you don't have to do it. And even if it's at 80%, you don't have to do it. Your money and time is spent elsewhere, focusing on higher dollar per hour tasks.
Yeah. Man, I think he can do 120% better than me.
Right. Perfect. Even better. It's still hard. It's still hard to let go of that control though. Right. I mean,
it was at first, but I think for me, it was hard in the beginning, but I think after sort of experiencing the pain of all these things, and then the relief, like that catharsis of, oh, thank God I don't have to deal with this anymore. Right. It's like, oh, I'm sold, right.
Yeah.
And then what happens is then, it's amazing, because then you start building networks, right. And then it expands the possibilities, right. So, you connect with the property manager in Philadelphia, and you work with them and you give over control. And then now you're like, oh, the next time a deal comes up in Philadelphia, I already got this set up, and now we can be more efficient. And then that one relationship now becomes it can start growing and being more valuable. You know what I mean? You help them and then they help you. It's everybody wins. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's building that team. And
right.
So where are you finding, the property managers, the other people that are a part of your team?
So, listen, you can go on Google, right? You can you can do that kind of research. Like, you find the property manager, you call 3 or 4 and kind of get an idea of how much experience they have, how many properties they're managing. And there's a list of questions that I found, that you can ask. And every contract has a way to get out of it, right? Like, I have a really bad property manager I'm dealing with. And so I found a new one. And so we're going to transition, and then once you have a good one, then you treat those people well. Right. And then everybody, that's what you have to do. And finding people that do good things is gold. That's gold for you. So, it's like amazing.
Yeah. And like you said, finding people who have values similar to you and who treat you well, and then you'll treat well, that's going to go a long way, because as soon as you get a bad name early in any industry, that word travels pretty quickly. And so it's super important to find somebody you jive with, right? They could be a great person, but maybe it's like, hey, this relationship doesn't feel like it's going to work. So finding the people with the same values as you. And have you found that to be challenging? And what kind of things are you looking for in another teammate that, aligns with kind of your values and what you're looking for?
For me, it's just, listen, I don't have to necessarily jive with them personally, right? So for example, I'm working with an amazing property manager for co-living in Denver, and the guy is really anal in an OCD, which is just fantastic, right? I love that.
Yep.
Because I'm not like that, and and so he's like super everything detail. And once he's on, like, everything's like amazing. I don't know if I'd want to like hang out, he's a great guy. Like but that's to me is to me the most important thing is how is somebody reliable, and reliability and integrity. You know what I mean? Is the most important thing, because that's what everything's based on. If somebody's reliable and they do what they say they're going to do, and you can trust that everything's working, that's the most important thing, I think.
100%.
So, because if people have problems with competence, usually integrity can overcome incompetence, because people with integrity will admit that they're making a mistake and then they'll learn from it, right? Whereas people who don't have that sort of integrity, or you don't know when they're screwing up, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes it's more important to find somebody with that work ethic, and someone you can rely on. And I can teach them to do whatever I want, right? As long as they have the work ethic and they're good people at heart and they want to do a good job, everything else will fall in line with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Nobody wants to work with the people that are sketchy, and everybody thinks it's funny. I think that a lot of people think, I think it's got to be the way that social media, and especially in real estate and all that stuff, is set up, and the YouTube videos, it makes it like very slick, right? And very kind of like, there's a lot of jets. To be honest, I've never watched more than maybe 15 seconds of anything by Grant Cardone, but like something about the whole experience makes me uneasy. You know what I mean? Right. Congratulations that you're a billionaire. You know what I mean? Like, Warren Buffett doesn't need to tell me he's a billionaire. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah. You know
what I mean?
Grant Cardone.
We're learning, like, it's hard for you. You have to put yourself out there on social media, especially if you don't have that, but that's like part of your it's your resume essentially. And you try to provide value, but there's a lot of stuff out there. So people kind of get this idea. I think it attracts a certain type of get rich quick kind of person that thinks that you need to kind of cut corners and game the system. I just don't think that's a good long-term strategy. First of all, even if you have no integrity or moral compass, right? I don't think it's a good business move, because you can't, I don't think you can hide that sort of thing for long. I mean, eventually people are going to figure it out. They're not going to want to work with you anymore,
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that kind of stuff definitely comes out, whether they mean for it to or not. It's like, even just offhand,
Right.
something gets said and it's like, wait, what? And it's like, so that does tend to come out sooner. And I agree with the Grant Cardone thing. Is funny that you mentioned that, because he's very polarizing, right? He was at Squad Up, which I was at in April. And like, people either love the dude or just like do not like the guy, just because of how he definitely brings that aura. I mean, the nice thing about it, he's very straight, he's very blunt, like, which kind of comes off as, him being an asshole, but you know what you're getting with him, which is the only like.
I like, by the way, I don't have an opinion about him at all. I'm just saying, just the whole, like, the way it's presented to me is what it makes me uneasy. I'm sure, listen, he could be a great guy. I don't know anything about him. Just the whole, like, sort of idea of what that's selling. And I bet you he would probably admit to you behind closed doors that it's all a facade, that the brand is its own thing. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And so when you're just selling a brand, but like, what is, like, okay, Nike is a brand and you can sell Nike as a brand, but there's also shoes, you know what I mean? Right. You have a product that you need to get your brand out there so people know about your product. But sometimes I feel like the brand is the product.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And so then what are you selling? And who's doing the, like, I always wonder, like, the people that join all these mentorships, how many mentorships do any sort of surveys? Okay. So what percentage of our sort of participants have made back their investment, and what has been the return on investment, right? Like, I mean, that's like the sub 2 mentorship is like, that's why it's gold, is because whatever it costs, it's already, I mean, everybody who's been at back orders of magnitude, over what it cost. I don't know. Listen, that's the only mentorship I ever did, so I don't really know about other ones, but I talked to a lot of people who are like, I did this one, that was 40,000, that was 25,000, like, and they didn't get anything out of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I don't know. I think that it's important to have that sort of integrity and stuff like that. I don't know. So I think my point is that a lot of people, they watch these videos, they watch this stuff, and they get this idea. The type of person that wants to get rich quick and easy, right, is a certain type of person that is either immature, like they're immature, or they're morally flexible, we'll say, right? Right. You know what I mean? Because then they want, right. Or they're not so smart, right? Because you don't have to just pay attention. Nobody's getting rich quick anywhere. And the people that do get rich quick are usually miserable, by the way, right? You just say these lottery winners, right? They're all miserable after 6 to 12 months, right? So get rich quick. So that I think that that's the type of person. So that I worried about, you connect with people that have this sort of integrity issue, because they look at that. Like, somebody at a meetup came to me. He's like, hey, he's like, whatever, we're interacting, we're schmoozing or whatever. He's like, hey, let's go make some money together. I was like, nah, why don't we just we'll be friends and or interact, or see how we can, move each other forward in some way or another. And if there's money that comes with that, like, there has to be, because we all have to pay the bills, and this is the motivator. But when that's like, I'm using you to make some money, I don't like.
Yeah. I think it's just like they're not clickbait words, but they're just like common terms that just people feel like they need to say. Like those buzzwords that just, hey, let's go make some money. Like, I get it. It's like,
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I might be overly sensitive to these things. Like, like, let's work together. Say, let's do something big together. Let's do something together. Let's like find some deals together, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I think money is not the, I don't know. Money is kind of the goal, but money is the marker more, I think of, right? The goal is like personal growth, right? Pushing boundaries. Like, for me, being raised in a family like that Robert Kiyosaki would say would be like a poor dad family, and having these assigned limits that, like, oh, I always pictured myself the doctor path, but this whole like business, that's not me. So then pushing those boundaries, right? And then saying, okay, that's what it's about. And then money just tells you, oh, it's like you're
working.
in business, like it's successful, like
Yeah.
keep going, it's working, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that even if you don't make money, you failed, you still had growth in the process. You learned something about yourself. Maybe you learned that this is not for you, right? I mean, so like it's a really sort of a win-win. Like there's a no-lose situation.
Mm-hmm. And so you talk about personal growth and just like, hey, it's not just about the money. It's like trying to improve myself with my skills or my personality traits to help develop those. What kind of things are you working on, and what kind of things have improved for your personal growth?
Yeah. So I think, well, a lot of that we talked about before, like just learning to like let go, hand off, but also dealing with sort of this kind of internal anxiety, right? How do you pushing through anxiety, right? I have an anxious sort of bent, right? How do you deal with these situations of uncertainty, right? How do you push through those moments? Like lots of times I want to quit, right? And so I would say this is just overwhelming. And so I'm just like, why am I doing this? Right.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's like, well, that feeling of why am I doing this? That's the growth. Meaning when you have that moment when you want to quit, right? And you don't, right? That stretching is what's causing the growth, right? I think that's what it is. And obviously assuming that you're not going to like bankrupt your family and stuff like that. But I'm thinking, just like when it's just right, like what Mark Twain says, like I've worried about many things, but most of them didn't come true or something. I can't remember what the quote is, right? So meaning that moment you're like, I'm overwhelmed and I want to give up. And you say, no, I'm going to keep going. I think it's the same. You're a wellness coach, same thing, right? Like, with exercise, it's only when you're uncomfortable that you grow, right? Like I do my outpatient office, I do lung disease, and I actually have people come to me because they're convinced there's something wrong with their lungs. And they say, listen, Dr. Grove, every time I exercise, I get sweaty, I get hot, I get short of breath. And something must be wrong. Right. And literally, and they come to me, they've had like every test you can imagine. And my response is generally, me too. Right.
Yeah.
I also get that way. Right. You know what I mean? And that's the point, right? You can't your body will not respond to the stress to create new muscle if it doesn't get to the point of discomfort. And I think it's true in a lot of things. So, listen, I had an experience. Remember, I was like with a guy, it was in the ICU, and there's a guy who was dying of heart failure. And I was with him, I just sitting with him and his wife. He actually ended up dying that night, and sitting there thinking like, man, you have these moments when you do my job where you're like, what would I be thinking, right? If I was in that bed right now, right? What would I most regret, right? And I said, I don't think I would regret failing at things. Like I tried and failed. I think I would regret what I never tried because I was afraid to fail. And so that means that I have to sort of, when I'm in those moments when I want to like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail or whatever, I can't, just keep going, right? Keep doing you sometimes you're just going through the motions, but as long as you're still on the, you're still on the treadmill, to mix our metaphors here, right? Right?
Yeah, I think it's important for sure that like that's the point. The point is to fail and not take that failure personally, or that you are a failure because you failed. But hey, all right, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? And how can I move forward with that? And not letting the fear of failure and the anxiety of being in the middle of everything closing in on you because it's about to fail stop you from doing it, right? You don't gain anything unless you quit, like you mentioned. But it's just like, hey, don't identify yourself with what's happening necessarily. It's not always your fault, but just being able to move through it and say, how can I do better next time? What can I learn and take away and give it another try, knowing what I know now?
Yeah, for sure. Listen, and it may be that this sort of thing is like the real estate or whatever investing is not the thing. And if somebody doesn't continue, it doesn't mean, sometimes there's an upside to quitting, meaning because it just means this is not your thing, and you're going to find the next thing where you feel like you're going to fail and you push through. There's always, something for somebody, right? And so, yeah, I think that's where the growth happens. It happens with the discomfort, I think, and to some, I think if I think a lot of people are probably in real estate are probably figuring this out in the last couple of years, because anybody who invested between whatever 2016 and 2021 was a genius,
Yep.
right? Like you were like you were a guru, right? Because it was record low interest rates, record high appreciation. If you were just in the game, you were. And then I think a lot of people now they had 2021, 2022, and which is when I got in, right? Right?
Yep.
So now it's like, oh wait, like a DSCR loan is 9%, 10%, and the appreciation is you're on the wrong end of the appreciation wave. And then things are going wrong and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think coming through that, I don't know. I feel just more confident in evaluating things and in moving forward. And I'll keep pushing, right? Because every moment, like every time you move into a new realm, there's going to be a new thing that you're like, right?
Yeah. The learning, the growing, the failing, it never stops. And if it's harder to invest now, eventually it's going to loosen up, right? Eventually we're going to go into a recession, market's going to go down, and you'll be in a much better spot. Hey, this is way easier now. Like, this is great. I've taken the hard
for
stuff.
sure.
I've figured out how to make this work. Now things are easy. Like, hey, let's gobble everything up and take advantage of an 09. Hopefully it's not that bad, but like an 08, 09 situation, because you've gone through the hard thing. Unfortunately, you got to do that first. But I think it makes you better to go through the harder things first, rather than just like you said, nobody could do any wrong. Like, even I got through a deal because we were at the tail end of an appreciation where it's like, when we got it under contract, it took so long to get together, we couldn't refinance it, but the market went up, so we could just wholesale it. Like, that's what we ended up having.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, that's what separates people, like when things are actually hard and the things are constrained, rather than the last 5 years where it's like you could flip a house, buy a house, wait 6 months, and then just sell it as it is without doing any work on it because it's gone up 50 grand for no reason.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these things usually come to an end. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. You can't time the market. You can't predict the market. You can just go off with what you know now and just push through the hard things.
Yeah. I do know that whatever happens, the politicians will take credit and put blame.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Even if nothing's changed.
Even if they have nothing to do with it. It's just oh, well.
So what is your business look like now? What are you working on? What are you looking for?
So now we're setting up. So we have an operations manager that we're working on setting up the systems to bring in deals from wholesalers that are creative deals. And then, so we're trying to build that up. I think this week, we're getting about 100 deals in a week that we're trying to underwrite. And then I'm trying to build a network of people that would want to invest in these kind of houses, right? All the people, like, I always think about myself. If somebody would have come to me 10 years ago, right, and said, do you want to invest in real estate? And I would have been like, I can't invest in real estate. I don't know anything about it. And they said, listen, like, I've done this. I made all the mistakes. You can be a partner in a deal, or you could just invest for an interest rate, like a lender. And then you can have your diversification of, so I'm trying to find people that would be interested in something like that, right? Professionals, people with a savings account, people that want to diversify all their, investments and then pair them up. Like, so we're yesterday where we found a lady, amazing lady. She's a single mom. She's got money in a savings account that I think she had like a self-directed 401k. I don't know if it was whatever it was. She had control of her retirement account. She is now an equity partner in a house that we're going to sell, that we're going to rent out as co-living. And so she's going to get 50% of that deal. Right. So she's now, and then in the process, we were on with the property manager. We're having these email and texting trees where she's involved in all that. She's learning how we set up the property management. She's learning how the closing works. She's learning how, we're setting up bank accounts and all that stuff. And she can do the next one on her own. And there's another one I'm hopefully going to close on hopefully next week with a lender, another doctor who he has money. Like they don't make doctors rich anymore, but if you find one above a certain age when they got in before, the only rich doctors nowadays are the ones that own the practice, are plastic surgeons and do like boob jobs for cash, or, the ones that sell the weight loss drugs. But, but he has his money, I think he invested, like he got super like Apple and Amazon, whatever. But so he doesn't want to just sit in a savings account. He's got other investments. So he's going to lend to me. And so he's got a collateral in a house. And, there's a lot of people out there, I think, that would be interested in either getting into real estate. They don't know, they want to learn the process. So you can pay 40 grand for a mentorship. You can read 25 books and watch 100 hours of YouTube videos, or you can take the money and we can do it together. And then I'll tell you all the things that I did reading the books and watching the YouTube videos and spending for the mentorship, and then you can do the next one on their own,
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't have to do any of the work, right? They can be involved in the process, right? Learn as they go, learn what's working, what's not working, right? Because not everything's perfect. And they can get paid to do it rather than to have to spend this money and then also do all of the work. Like, hey, here's a go. I'll learn as you guys go through it. I'll take my monthly check. So I'll get paid to learn the process. And then, like you said, if all things go well and I just want to continue that, not doing anything and just kind of being, fly on the wall, perfect. If not, I can always just take the knowledge that I've learned and gotten paid to learn, and I'll do it on my own, or I'll partner with somebody else, right? It's like just looking to build that relationship. I want to win-win. I want you to get paid. I want you to feel safe. I want it to be backed by the real estate. Right. And I want you to learn as much as possible, but it also benefits you or me because now I have the money. I don't have to come up with all this money. I can scale the business up to whatever I want it to be.
Yeah. And then some people are like, here's the money. I don't want to hear about it. Just here's the bank account, just deposit the checks. And that's fine too,
Yeah. Yeah. As long as I get that check every month, I don't really care what's going on. Right. Like,
Something like you take the money. Yeah. Fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So we talked a lot about your real estate business, stuff like that. I know that you ran a half marathon a couple months ago and are potentially doing another one soon.
Sunday is redemption day. It's redemption day because my last half marathon, I had this like viral illness 2 weeks before and I lost like 7 pounds, but I had recovered like 5 days before and I ran. It was just like awful. But so now, yeah. So I listen, I go to work every day and see what happens when people don't take care of their bodies. It's a constant motivator, right? I don't see people in the hospital who exercise regularly. I just rarely, it is the only thing which reverses aging, which, improves mood and sleep, and it improves like self-esteem. And then you look better and you get endorphins and all these drugs that people are using on the street. You get them for free without side effects from your own body. You know what I mean? And so it's good for literally exercise is good for everything except for a broken bone. You just have to wait a few weeks till it heals and then it helps everything. You know what I mean? I'm constantly counseling people. I think I did 2 days in the office last week and every single patient, like you got to be active. Right. And so it's just the most important thing, especially now that everybody's sitting down all day. It's been really hard this week though, because this is the taper week, right? So I'm not supposed to run as much. I'm like antsy, like I have to rest. But but yeah, I mean, I think that if you don't have a healthy body, healthy relationships, and at least a comfortable, like at least a sort of a healthy financial situation. It doesn't have to be wealth, but like at least you're paying your bills, you're living beneath your means. If you don't have those three things, that's like a stool with only two legs. You're going to be off balance and something's going to collapse, right? I think you have to have all those three things: your health, your relationships, and your sort of your sense of well-being financially, And so I think a lot of people think that they can build the wealth and compensate for the other two, but you can't. You can't. If you don't have those three things, you will not be happy. I don't care how many billions of dollars you have, you won't. Right. I look at, I don't know if Jeff Bezos or is it Bezos? Bezos is a happy person. I don't know. But he's divorced. So it can't be that his relationships were so great. You know what I mean? Right. And the question is would he give a couple $100 billion or a couple tens of $1 billion to have had a happier marriage? Probably.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what too, like having a healthy body, like when somebody's, terminally ill, right? I don't know if you deal with that, but I'm sure you have, like,
sure, yeah.
What would they give? What would they pay to be able to be healthy? And just like, that's in your control, right? I can't control my height. I can't control what I look like, facially, but like the one thing I can control is how healthy I am, how much I'm going to the gym, like what I'm eating. Those things I can control. I can make my body look great, but everything else is kind of, it is what it is. So like, let's control what I can control and figure out how to enjoy
Right.
that process of eating well and going to the gym. And it doesn't need to be crazy restrictive where it's like, hey, I'm on a strict diet. Like, hey, you just need to eat enough protein. You need to eat some veggies. Like, you can go out on the weekends every once in a while too. Like, that's
Right.
not a big deal, but like, just drink enough water, get enough sleep. Like, it's very basic
Right.
things, but just like real estate, just because it's simple doesn't mean that it's easy. And some people have it easier because they're fortunate on where they started from, right?
Right.
Just like some people financially are in a better spot. Maybe their parents were investors or owned their own
Right.
businesses and they were wealthy and they understand, they're taught like that, like the rich dad scenario, right? They're have that upbringing. I'm definitely fortunate on the fitness side of things because my parents were always at the gym. They were, my mom was a step instructor and did all that stuff. So
Right.
that was just part of what I grew up with, but it doesn't mean you can't learn how to do it. It just takes a little bit of time. It takes a little frustration, just like the real estate stuff does. So, yeah, I agree. Anybody who's sick or dealing with anything immediately is like, what's the one thing you want? I want to be healthy. I don't care. I would spend any amount of money to get there.
Yeah. I think also that all three also have a similar model, meaning, so everybody knows like financially, you got to save for your retirement. You got to put money in an account so that when you're older and you can't make as much money, you need to withdraw from that account. Well, the same is true with your relationships and with your health. I always tell people exercising is like putting money in the 401k. Okay. Most of the time you don't need it. Right. But you're building up this account to draw down your 401k to pay your bills. You're going to draw down this sort of health 401k to keep you active and independent. Right. Mm-hmm. Listen, I always tell people there's only two things that keep somebody out of a nursing home. Right. One is luck, genetics, God, whatever, one of those, right? Whatever you believe in. The second is exercise. Most people think that there's a third, which is just saying very loudly or very confidently, I'm never going to a nursing home. It's not one of the three, because otherwise nobody would be in a nursing home, right? Those, you have to have those things. So you have to, deposit money into your retirement account. You have to deposit money into your health retirement account, into your relationship retirement account, and so that you build relationships, you build your health, and you build your wealth, so that when you're at the end of your life, you have plenty in the account that you can then draw on. People who are fit, when they get pneumonia, they're sick for a week and they get back on their life, and it takes them a while to recover. People who are not fit, they get pneumonia, they're in the hospital. And if they're really not fit, then they're in the nursing home. Mm-hmm. Like I see it every day. You know what I mean? And so I always think of these things. All three things require a retirement account that you need to make regular deposits in.
I love that. That's a great comparison. And
yeah,
to your point too, I had another guy who went to the gym. I think he got Lyme disease. I don't know, but either way, he wasn't at the gym for a while, and then he finally came back. And I was like, "Hey man, like how's it going? I haven't seen you. What happened?" Apparently, and I think it was Lyme disease, but whatever happened, his heart rate got so low, and he was a super fit guy, like at the gym every day, like. But his heart rate got so low that the doctors were like, if you weren't already in good shape, this would have killed you, because your heart rate was ridiculously low, but it was strong enough to keep things moving and good enough. And again, this is secondhand. I don't know anything about, certainly not a medical doctor, but it makes sense. I was like, okay. And you hear time again too, where people get in a car accident and they're really fit. They're like, hey, your muscles, your bones, like they help protected you, whatever. Like, so I love that. We're like, hey, you're depositing this for down the road, and that could be a month down the road, and hopefully not for 40 years down the road.
Yeah, the health and relationships. There's no penalty for withdrawal from the IRS if you need to withdraw from your health account. You do need to replenish it though in your recovery, but there's no penalty for early withdrawal if you have to use it.
Yeah. So are you mainly running, and how did you get into running?
Yeah. So I used to do CrossFit also in my basement. Okay. I really love that. And then I tore my rotator cuff, which actually wasn't from CrossFit. It was from something else. So I had to do, I did a repair, and I couldn't lift anything for like 6 months.
Yep.
So I wasn't going to do nothing. So I got a treadmill because they said they didn't want me like running outside until a certain amount of time, because if I tripped and fell, it'd be bad news.
Yep. I tore my labrum, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I had this really cool treadmill that has like, it's got something called iFit, where you follow, it's kind of like Peloton, but instead of classes, you follow runners in various parts of the world, and these are running coaches. So I started doing that, and then I learned all about the science of running and how to train, and I really started enjoying it. And so now that I was like, listen, I'm getting a lot closer to 50, right? And so, listen, at some point, being strong, right, didn't become my primary goal, because I sort of gave up on it, right? But now it's like healthy, right? And so,
Yep.
running is a great way to stay healthy. And then I lift weights like maybe once a week and mix it with running, as opposed to the other way around. And so now it's like, it's been something I look forward to it. I get the endorphins. I look forward to it. I think the problem I had with CrossFit, I probably went too hard, and I was always like sore.
Yep.
But because I didn't have time to go to the gym, so I probably should have gone to a gym and had a coach be like slow down. You know what I mean? But so now I just like, there's something about this CrossFit is great because of the community and that part of it. But for me, just the flexibility is what I need. It was too hard for me to have a set times because of my schedule's all weird. Sometimes I'm long days, sometimes not. So for me, just the ability to just need to put on shoes, and go, that was key for me.
Yeah. It's funny that you it's fun. People who love running, just stumble across it. I don't love running. I don't like it really that much either. I tolerate it for periods of time. Like CrossFit, we never really run that long, at most a mile at one time. I've been doing triathlon, so I did start running a little bit more. I played soccer, so it's not new to me, but I just putting headphones in and just kind of running. Maybe adding the iFit where you can watch somebody and go through.
That made a difference for me. and then I got to, I think a lot of times if you study the science of running, is all endurance training is that you're really supposed to have the vast majority, 80% of your training time or volume needs to be at low intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done studies on people that when people are not tracking that, with their heart rate, they typically do 50-50. They overtrain. And so when you're doing so it takes a long time for probably like you, like me. It was really hard at the beginning to force myself to go slow, because I didn't feel like I was getting a workout.
Yep.
Right. But then you learn oh no, and that 80% time is when everything is recovering and rebuilding. And then once I got to the point where I'm comfortable, I got a little bit better, so that my low intensity time wasn't I was barely almost walking, but it got better. So now I was so that once you get to the point where you're not really, doesn't feel like you're stressing yourself at all, right? It feels like you just go forever.
Yep.
Right. And then your mind kind of does the things things just pop in your head, right? We get coaching, you want to do these sort of YouTube videos and how these ideas, they just pop in your head, solutions to things. Your brain's listening to music, and then you kind of, to me, that's what it became. It took me a while. I had 6 months, I had no choice. So it kind of forced me. And then after a while, I was well, actually, once you do the low intensity 80% of the time, it's actually enjoyable, and you still get the endorphins that you get with higher intensity, because endorphins are really time released more than intensity released. And so I started to enjoy it. Actually, there's research on weight loss that shows that running is actually the most effective form of exercise for weight loss. And it's not because the exercise is more effective. It's because people stick with it longer. So the compliance is better. So CrossFit is a much better way to lose weight, but it takes a certain personality sometimes, I think, to want to do that. But running is something that if you do it right, if you do it at the low intensity majority time, then people stick with it longer. And that's the key. The key of all weight loss and fitness and investing and whatever is slow, incremental over with long time horizons, right? Yep. I always tell my patients, anybody who's trying to lose weight, the minute somebody picks a goal weight loss, they've already failed.
Yep.
Because either way, either they don't get there and they quit, or they get there and they're I'm done, as if somehow they completely reset their genetic makeup.
Yep.
Now that they've lost the weight. No, it's actually the opposite. You reset it to favor gaining weight back, right?
Yep.
So you don't. I always tell my patients, this is what I tell them, and this is what I give advice for anybody who wants to lose weight, is that I tell them, you get a calendar, one of those flip calendars that you write on. We used to have those before we had Google Calendar or whatever, right? And you come up with an exercise goal and a diet goal. And whatever you think that goal should be, you cut it in half. And then you cut it in half again.
Yep.
Okay. You make it very like you say, I'm going to do 5 minutes a day, but you're going to do it every day. Okay. And then every day that you meet your goal, you put a slash on the one exercise day for exercise. And then you do a slash the other way for diet. And your goal in life is to have 12 months of full calendars. Forget about the scale. Once you've gotten 6 months or 9 months of a full calendar, now we're going to start talking about, okay, maybe we should try this type of exercise. Maybe we should increase this type of intensity. But until somebody's mindset is, we're not even thinking about anything until we've done this every day for a year or 9 months. Like, we're not even thinking about it. Right. Because I think that's the problem, is that people, if you want to be successful at something, anything, step one is build the habit. Build the habit. And then later you can tweak the intensity, the type, the whatever, you know what I mean? Once you have that habit now as part of your life, it's much easier than to stack. Atomic Habits is a great book. It's like habit stacking, but you got to build a habit first. And sometimes it takes up to 9 months for somebody to really build a habit. And the people that don't do that, because everybody wants quick and easy, you'll get quick and easy. There's lots of quick and easy out there, but it won't last, because your body will react, and people always gain back plus a little bit more. Because again, everybody always tells me diets don't work. And it's not true. Diets always work. Every diet works. It just stops working when you stop doing it.
Yep.
Right. So if you're not doing this for the rest of your life, it's going to stop working when you stop doing it. Right. It's funny that you have to go to medical school to learn that. Right? You know what I mean? If you stop that. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. And that's what, and like my nutrition coaching, it's all habit-based foundational stuff. Like, this is not like, we're going to do this diet. We're not going to count macros. We're not going to do any of this. It's okay. What are you currently doing? And what can we not even take away? What can we add in? Can we add in vegetables, right? Most people don't eat enough vegetables. Can we add in protein, or can we drink more water throughout the day, or get more sleep? It's like one of those little pieces of the foundation. Is what can we add in, and then do that consistently for 2-3 weeks. And then, okay, cool, we got that down. Now what else can we add in? You add it in. And it's like, yeah, it sucks that it takes 6 months to do this. But guess what? After the 6 months, look at all the habits you just added. You didn't even take anything away yet. Maybe we get there down the road. But yeah, it took 6 months, maybe, and you've probably lost some weight, but maybe you haven't even lost that much. But after that 6 months, look at the habits you have. Now moving forward, now we can start cutting things out, making that the new habit of what we're eating and drinking throughout the week. And now you can do it for the rest of your life, and it's easy, and you don't have to worry about yo-yoing your weight all over the place.
That's all these diets that, whatever is Atkins and South. I've been so many, and they all work, but nobody can live like that for their whole life.
No,
or maybe very few people can. I mean, like, I guess Weight Watchers was effective just because it wasn't a diet as much as a consciousness. Like, you became aware of what you're eating, but it doesn't work. You have to have something. The minute your mindset is anything other than forever, right? And then how do I build forever? And then, like I said, if you don't lose weight in the first 9 months, it's okay, because now, as long as you have the habit, because now you can start ratcheting up. You don't start out as whatever, a non-GMO organic vegan who only eats whatever sprouts and no food coloring. And, you don't want to start out like that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And same thing with real estate, right? Like, you got to build those habits of analyzing deals every day, or whatever your role is in that. Like, you have to build those habits of doing everything. And 9 months, maybe you get a property, right? Depending on how you have things built up. You have an operations manager who helps, increase the volume, and therefore you can do more. But
I'm 2 years in here, right? You know what I mean? I've been doing this every day for 2 years, right? Before we got to that point.
Exactly. You build that foundation. It's a lifelong thing. Now I have the habits, right? I've gotten 1 this year, then I get 2 next year, and I start learning and scaling it up. But I have the foundational habits, knowledge, information that I need to be successful in the long run, right? Thinking, like you said, hey, there's no end date in this. Like, let's continue down the road, pretend like we're going to need to do this forever, because ideally we do.
Yeah. And any video mentorship that tells you anything else is selling you something, right? And so, because it's just not life. I mean, nothing works that way, right? Yeah. Nothing works that way. And when people get it that way, they're unhappy. So you wouldn't even want it that way if you could get it that way. You think you would, but you don't, right? Yeah. everybody thinks that they'll be happier when they win the lottery, and nobody is.
No.
Except for the people that give it away, right? Those are the people that are happier, right? And so, this is just life. Like this is how you become good at anything. Is just a slow daily commitment, and that's what changes a person. People don't make changes suddenly, right? People don't make changes suddenly. That's what the key is, and I think that you can apply to anything.
Yeah, I love that. So tons of little nuggets there, lots of great analogies too. I love those. You've always been really good at those, so I will probably be stealing those like for down the road.
Steal away. Yeah.
So if somebody is looking to, wholesaler looking to send you a property, or a lender that wants to come in on your next project, what's the best way to get in touch with you and work with you in that?
Yeah. So that website, I have all the social media links. On that website, I also put up like a blog post, an experience, something I learned, I'll put up there. And you can reach out to me through that website. If you're just a wholesaler, you can just send it. I have our email inbox just for deals is deals@100gatesproperties.com. That's the number 100gatesproperties.com. And that's where we sort of send it. You can just throw that email onto your buyers list, and then we'll evaluate the deals. We're looking at any creative deals, pretty much we'll look at anything, right? And we'll let you know. Usually we try to give some feedback if it's what we're looking for, but it's just, I find it's too complicated to give like a very complicated buy box.
Yeah.
Just if it's a creative deal, it cash flows as a long-term rental, send it to us, and then we'll be in touch.
Perfect. I love that. And I'll include, we'll collect your links, and we'll include that in the show
description.
Sure.
All the links are on that website right there. Yeah.
Perfect. That makes it easy. Well, Dan, I appreciate you coming on. It's been great. Like I said, lots of great analogies, lots of great pieces of information I think people can take away. So yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.